But let's start at the top on a melancholy note. Obviously, the whole world has watched what's been unfolding overnight, mostly in the U.S. in the last 2 or 3 days, with the protests following the death of George Floyd, an African-American man in Minneapolis, death at the hands of a policeman who's since been charged with third-degree murder. There's a lot of anger, a lot of resentment out there. We're not going to get into that because we're not a political show, but I do invite people to listen. I thought Schalke Hislop very eloquent on this on the FC show. I've tweeted it out. I think he's got a very good handle on sort of the mood out there and also how it relates to professional athletes, which is what I do want to get into because Jules, started with Weston McKennie on Saturday. He wore an armband that said justice for George Floyd. It continued the following day, or continued later with Marcus Thuram in the Gladbach game. Obviously, Thuram, somebody who's very sensitive to these things. His father, Julien Thuram, obviously has been a long time been a campaigner against racism. And then obviously continued in the Dortmund game with both Jadon Sancho and Achraf Hakimi, displaying shirts in support of this justice for George Floyd. When footballers move out of their lane, there are some people who instantly tell them, no, go back into your lane. Marcus Thuram, I should add, his goal celebration, it was basically like Colin Kaepernick kneeling down.
Yeah, kneeling down.
There's no question that they're influenced. I mean, my first thought here is that this really is, as the cliche goes, a global village. This really is a story that maybe it's because we're on lockdown, maybe because the world has already changed. This story really goes all over the world. I get McKennie because he's American, but for the others, they saw this and they still felt affected by it.
Wherever you live, whatever your background is, whatever the skin of your color is, whatever job you are, you're a football player, you work in an office, you're like us. This is a story that should touch you. This is a story that should alert you in what is going wrong in the world right now. And whether you want to go and protest peacefully or not, this is your own choice. But I think your voice is important. Every voice here is important. Of course, football players, maybe more than others, because they are so big. Everybody watches them. Everybody listens to them. Marcus Thuram might not have been much known across the Atlantic before yesterday, but now everybody has seen his goal celebration. Everybody would have researched him and his father, Lilian, like you said, and everything that family has done to fight racism in France, in Europe, and all around the world. And I think it's so important that football players and ones who are playing, others on social media have also used those platforms to make their voice heard. That's Kylian Mbappe had a lovely messages with emojis on Saturday about it. And I think this is so important. And I think they should be encouraged to do it, and not people trying to say to football players, stay and keep what you're doing. And this is not your field, or this is not something that you should be talking about and things like
Stick
that.
to what you know.
Never ever say to football players, exactly, not to talk about their feelings or what they think about issues around the world.
I think that's a great point, and I think it's also very difficult for. I mean, there were people of different ethnicities who came out and made the stand. Obviously, Achraf Hakimi, who's African but is white.
North African, yeah.
His experience is going to be different to that of Marcus Thuram. So when that's really bugs me when people say to stick to what you know. You don't know what these people know. You don't know what they might have felt. You don't know how they're experiencing. Everybody's different. Everybody experiences this differently. That said, there are rules on the books, and I think they're there for a good reason, banning political messages on shirts. This goes back to in England. You had the whole nonsense with the poppy and whatnot. I think, though, and this is kind of my hope, that this message, right? They're not. This simple message, justice for George Floyd. this is something that, when the message is universal, when everybody agrees with it, I think it ceases to be a political message and it becomes a message more of humanity. In the same way that, when FIFA and UEFA send people out with those armbands that say no to racism, yes, if you're a racist, you might say, well, that's a political message because we should be racist. But the reality is the world doesn't see it that way. Most of the world agrees. This is a shared value, saying no to racism. And I think wanting justice for somebody who dies at the hands of the police or the people who are supposed to take care of them is completely transversal. I mean, let's not forget, the President of the United States was one of those who asked justice for George Floyd, right? Among others.
Yeah.
So I think, and whichever way you like him, whether you like him or not. So this is something that I think everybody can agree on, whatever your political view. And I think it's something that, a bit like being against racism, a bit like being against sexism, against violence towards women. These are against violence in general. I mean, these are issues which are so transversal that I would be really disappointed if any of these players were, faced sanction for making political gestures.
Yeah, I mean, I find it already incredible that Jadon Sancho got a yellow card, which you reminded to me just before we did the show, because watching the game, I think I was so wonderfully pleased by the message that Jadon Sancho had on his shirt and his action, that I didn't actually see that the referee booked him. And I know this is the rule, and I know this is the process, and
well, that's to be fair, he was booked because he removed his shirt, not because he displayed.
But there's a reason why, Jadon Sancho has scored 15 goals this season. That's the only time where he took the shirt off for a reason. And I think the referee could have seen that. But again, let's not go there. But yeah, let's hope that at least it doesn't go any further than that.
Thanks so much for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content and live streaming, subscribe to ESPN Plus.